I'm Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's going on, Woods people? We are in the cozy Bad Fellas studio, and we are sitting here in Sulphur Springs, Texas. It's a beautiful day, probably about 65 degrees, and more of the same sunny weather tomorrow. I'm sitting here with my buddy KC. We just chowed down on some brisket. What's going on, dude?
Man, I got my belly full. I feel better. Been working all day and had a delicious snacky full of red meat and fat. And
oh yeah,
that's what men run on. You know, that's the good stuff.
That's how you get your energy, man.
That's it, man. I'm enjoying the view up here. I hadn't been up in this room much. I like it. I like the posters. I like the ambience. I like the DU poster. That's cool.
Yeah, you should have been here when it was like actually, somewhat clean and had all of our setup here, their studio recording equipment here and tables and everything, and I had a nice coffee table there if you wanted to put your coffee there and your feet.
My feet have nowhere to go right now. It's up on the ground.
Yeah, well, that pulls out into a mattress.
Oh.
In case you're wondering.
Maybe later.
It weighs about 500 pounds.
I bet. You got it up here somehow. Up the stairs.
Yeah. So,
but, man, have you noticed how many more than normal to me golden eyes have been shot in the Northeast Texas area this year? Have you seen that much on social media?
Dude, I'm sad to say that I have not been duck hunting one time.
That's your thing, man.
That I know it used to be. Hasn't been the last couple of years. We haven't had the birds like we used to on the public, especially. But yeah, I haven't been. I'm supposed to go next weekend, which is the last weekend, and I got the invite. So it's a little private deal, and I think they've been shooting some decent birds off it all year. So looking forward to that. But I haven't noticed anything about the golden eyes this year. Just maybe I'm not tuned into it on social media, or maybe I don't know enough duck hunters on social media. I don't know.
Well, I think that I've never noticed any before, and I've on all the, local pages and then guys that I actually know. I think all in all, I've seen 4 golden-eyed drakes get killed in Northeast Texas this year, which is crazy to me. I mean, I saw my first one December 2015 ever in Texas.
Really?
Yeah.
I've shot one.
You have, really?
Mm-hmm. Shot it was a very, very immature drake. I guess, just young of the year. And it basically, almost looked like a hen. He was just not very good. So he went, into the meat pile. But, I've been seeing more buffalo heads lately on the lake, though. Yeah. And not that necessarily that people have been killing them, but I've been seeing them. And they've been, I saw one there at the lodge the other day. And then, I shot one last year, and we had a ton last year up and down right there by the lodge on that bank. So
yeah, they like that open water stuff, seems like.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's a rare duck for us. I don't know about everywhere else in the country. But anyway, pretty cool.
Little bitty speedsters, man.
They are, dude. Little butterballs. But anyway, well, we've been doing some stuff together lately quite a bit. But before we talk about that, you went on a trip and so we won't get into all the details of why we're just now talking about this. But I don't know. It's been a week and a half?
Yeah. It's 2 weekends ago. So not this past weekend, but the one before. Not long ago. I mean, I just wrapped up packaging all my meat last night, so it hasn't been that long. Right. I let it sit for a week, which, in a cold cooler, it was fine. Good for the aging process.
So was it sitting in the cooler with ice and water, or did you drain that?
Yeah, I'm starting to learn something about that. So me and you've talked before. My elk that I harvested in September is a little bit watery and bloody, and I kind of had the same issue with this because I'm letting the meat sit in ice water for too long, and that meat's just absorbing the water, and it's just too wet, like I was having a hard time making my food saver work because there's too much liquid in it. And as far as the elk goes, like I'll thaw out a package of hamburger meat, and then I can squeeze it and squeeze out, like a tablespoonful of water or bloody water out of it, which, doesn't hurt anything except it's just a mess, and I'd really just rather be able to age it properly and not be so wet, Right. So something that I need to start doing is pre-freezing those water jugs and putting them in my cooler. And, that way you have, it's not dry ice, but it's essentially ice that doesn't melt onto your meat. That way your meat is separate. It's, I just don't feel like, especially for red meat, mammals, not so much fish, but mammals, like, submerging it in water, unless it's a brine before you cook, is not really beneficial in any way, you know. So,
well, I mean, the way I understand it, when you do age your meat, one of the best things for it is that, like, outer drying surface, the surface that dries on the outside, somehow that, I don't know what it is, but there's bacteria, I guess, that is tastier or whatever, somehow,
yummy.
I guess. So, but I mean, like, I guess you don't get that quite the same with the wet age or whatever.
I've done a little dry aging. I learned a lot from Alton Brown. He does good eats. He's a really good show to watch. But, he talks about the dry aging process and stuff that you can do on meats just in your refrigerator. And I've kind of set up, a little thing with a Tupperware with a grate over the top of it. But I have to let it sit for like a day before it even starts dry aging because it's just draining before that pretty much, So, I don't know, a little bit more.
Being young and poor doesn't really help the culinary aspect of what we do sometimes. We have to make our way the best we can with what we've got.
Helps the creative aspect, though.
It does.
Yeah.
We don't just have walk-in coolers everywhere to just go hang everything,
I'm not saying I wouldn't trade it for the other, though.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. What's so I guess we'll go ahead and get into the story though of what happened that weekend and why you have meat to be processing.
Yes, exactly. I have ample amounts. Not ample. I've been blessed with enough to make it through the year from the elk. So I'm not in need of more venison per se, but it's always nice to have more, and I'd like to be able to share the harvest a little bit. And
we need to hashtag that.
Share the harvest.
Did somebody hashtag that already?
I don't know, maybe.
Dude.
We can all share the harvest.
Hashtag share the harvest, man.
That's it, dude.
And then if you aren't hashtagging it, then you're against the movement.
You know what else?
What's
the
that?
harvest makes us human.
Yeah, it does. It does.
That's really what separates us from animals is that we're going to harvest something and take it home and manicure it and make it something tasty as opposed to just killing it and eating it right there.
Yeah.
But
or eating it and then killing it in the case of some wolves and coyotes.
In the case of wolves and coyotes, which
I'm not trying to get us off on a rabbit trail here.
Man, you can get me off on coyotes real quick. I am a coyote lover and hater at the same time. But anyways, back to the task at hand. I have a buddy who has a pretty substantial amount of family land in the Texas Hill Country, and usually every January we go down for the doe and spike season to go and help them out with their doe numbers because down there, so here we don't have an issue with food and forage. Like deer can make it through the winter. We have mild winters usually. We just don't have a lot of winter kill. Down there, it's not like it's that much worse, but you can have overgrazing just from deer herd.
Right.
And they run cattle.
They're high densities.
Yeah, high density deer herds.
And cattle grazing. Yeah, because other than kind of where we're at, a majority of the western half of the state has grazing. You know what I'm saying? From cattle.
Yeah, every
single
acre is used by cows.
Every single acre, pretty much. Yeah. So you don't tend to think about that sometimes. But I've noticed the same thing up in Kansas the last couple of years since we got EHD. I actually had to start thinking about stuff like that. But we didn't have EHD. We didn't have much cattle action going on, and they turned into a dang working ranch, since then. But you start to look at what they do, and I know that they eat different things at times, but they do probably cross their diets some.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, deer, are, I don't know the scientific words, but they're browsers. They'd rather pick the leaf off a, honeysuckle than they would eat the grass off the ground. But in the middle of the winter, all there is that grass that's on the ground. That's all there is to eat. They really don't have much of a mass crop, acorns or anything down there. Just a few post oaks here and there. But
down there is hill country, kind of, right?
Yeah, hill country stuff. It's right there, kind of where like that Llano Estacado kind of flattens out into some of the more northern stuff. It's right. It's in Mason County, right up near the Mason-Llano County line, and excuse me. So it's really cool country. It's pretty much like if you took your hand and pointed your fingers out and spread them out, that's kind of like what their place looks like. So there's big hill, big valley, big hill, big valley. And then like, secondary hills that come into those. And it's more that, how we talk about we don't have terrain here? Mm. It's a lot like what you hear about people talking about in the Midwest hunting, because you've got these ridge lines and you've got saddles and you've got lots of different terrain features that deer use out there. And it's so cool to see because, here we struggle with finding deer trails or figuring out, even if they use this path or how often they do or why they walk on the left side of the tree as opposed to the right or whatever. You can't see that. Well, down there, man, there's deer highways along the top of the ridge lines,
right?
And they use them constantly. It's pretty cool to go down there. But anyways, the whole reason we go down there is for to take care of that doe herd for them. And this year we didn't meet our number due to some inclement weather and a couple of other things, but they were a little bit low. Normally we need to go down there and take between 12 and 16, and this year we needed to take 21, and that's just for 6 guys in 2.5 days. Even with okay, so most of my friends are gun hunters, rifle hunters, which in Texas is the standard, not the exception like it is in some places because we have such a long gun season, and that's what everybody grows up doing. And down there too, you can see forever, and it's pretty hard to target deer with a bow down there because you can see so far, and there's no big trees to get in, and I don't know, it's just really tough.
Mesquite trees mostly, right?
Well, their place, quite a few mesquites. It's pretty much intermittent with mesquites and live oaks, but they're not all very big. Most of them are pretty small.
Right.
And there's really no tree big enough to put a tree stand in except just a very few, and none of them are like in deer spots, So a lot of ground hunting, a lot of blinds built out of rocks. That's cool. They got cool. They got some blinds on this place, like ground blinds that's probably been there for 100 years.
Really?
Yeah, they're like and
that's cool.
Yeah, one of their stands is called the Blue Pickup Cab, and it literally is a 52 Ford pickup cab on top of a hill that you go sit in and hunt out of. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But they've kind of updated it and put a fancy stand right next to it, but it's still called the Blue Pickup Cab.
Yeah,
you can
of
still
course.
Crawl in there.
Yeah,
a ringtail used to live in there too. It's pretty cool,
dude. Okay, so I thought about this. What was I doing the other day? I saw a picture of a ringtail. I think it was Texas Parks and Wildlife had posted it.
Yeah,
and I thought I've never seen one.
Yeah,
never seen one. And I know the hill country is like where they thrive, from what I understand. And I haven't hunted down there a lot. I did a little bit when I was younger for a couple of years, but that's about it.
They're cool little creatures, man. They're like, they're called a ring-tailed cat. They're not actually a feline, but they remind you of a cat, and they can crawl through the tree like a squirrel, and they got a tail that's almost like a raccoon, but it's black and white, and it's like 1.5 times the length of their body. They're super cool looking. And they're kind of creepy too at night. Like, okay, so in my younger days, I went through that spell of where it's fun to go spotlight and just shoot stuff. I don't really enjoy it anymore. But we kind of all go through that. And we used to go down there and we go spotlighting coon hunting, and we had the excuse that the coons spread rabies or something like that, so we didn't kill the coons, whatever, Yeah. But and every once in a while we get to shoot a ringtail. One time, I shot a ringtail in a tree. He ran in a hollow in the tree, or a holler. That's how I usually say it's holler. I ran a holler in the tree.
Now, is this something that's legal?
Well, I think the statute of limitations has run out on it, so it's fine.
Okay. But who can tell really if you're lying or not anyway? So, if a game warden comes to your house in the next couple of weeks, then you can just say, man, I'm just lying for the podcast.
That's it. Yeah, just infatuating, Well,
that's good. Okay, anyway, sorry.
He ran in the holler, and I crawled up in the tree because I'd never seen one. I wanted to see it. That's why I wanted to take it, because I just wanted to see one up close. You know, it's a cool, weird animal we don't have here. And I crawl up in there and I shine my light down this hollow, and dude, his eyes were like 8 inches from mine, and they're nocturnal animals, so their eyes are super bright with a light. And he's like going, and I about jumped out of the tree. I was getting down real quick. I left him up there. I bet he healed up and was fine. He was not hurting too bad.
Yeah.
So good day for the ringtail.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
Well,
anyways, where were we at on that?
we were talking. So you're talking about the blue truck stand, and then talking about the ground blinds and stuff.
Neat names like.
Dude, that's a Texas thing, I think.
Yeah.
Because I've been on several leases throughout the years in Texas, and had the privilege to hunt leases that weren't, I just got invited to do or whatever. Mm-hmm. And there always is something about. I mean, I've been on a new lease where like guys are like, we're going to name that one this one, and that one this one. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, sometimes you kind of. You want a stand site to like earn its name instead of just be given something, And but I think it's just such a Texan thing to do. It's like we're gonna get these suckers named quick,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, down there, I think those names. I mean, that ranch has been in their family since the late 1860s.
Wow.
So these names, I mean, they probably haven't been like hardcore. They probably subsistence hunted for a while,
right?
But, as far as hunting for the game purposes, for pleasure, that probably hasn't been going on for forever. But all these places, like one place is called the Well House, and there's not a well to be found. So, but at one point in time there was a well house there.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of neat. But I hunted with my bow, and everybody else was rifle hunting. Which is the norm down there. I usually go down there rifle hunt, but this year I really just had the bow itch. I missed the buck earlier in the season and really wanted to, make another harvest with it to kind of make myself feel a little better. And I just get more enjoyment out of it these days, and it's nothing, like I'm not a guy who'll be like, oh, you're an idiot, you're a gun hunter, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But like, just for me personally, that's what I have fun doing right now, and I'm going to do it. I just don't, I know I can shoot out to 400 yards with my 7 mag, so where's the challenge? And down there, like we were talking about, it's all ground hunting. So I don't know if you've ever tried to stalk a whitetail on the ground or stand on the ground without a blind, but it is tough. I mean, they are just, man, they can see, and okay, so I was wearing my Sitka gear, and it works great down there, especially, the elevated 2 is made for tree stand hunting, but down there it's such arid and dry country that the colors blend in perfectly.
And a lot of that rock on those hills is white, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And anytime I was standing still, like I had deer within 40 yards, just milling around for like 30 minutes one time. Mm-hmm. Nothing. I reached down to pick up my bow one time, and it was just like heads all whip around because they saw my forearm move. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's amazing how we get so adjusted to hunting in a tree stand and how much movement we can get away with and how much just anything we can get away with in a tree stand. You know what I mean?
Right.
And on the ground, it's not
especially
like
the one we hunt.
Yeah, for real.
We hunted this year at least. Dude, that thing is bad to the bone.
It is, man.
So were you still hunting or were you spending most of your time?
Both. Yeah. So I'll just go through the days. First morning we get down, we down there late at night. Get up early the next morning, and like we go to our best spots, like because first morning, and we're all doe hunting, so it's not no need to do camera research or anything like that to pick out the doe with the biggest head, like it doesn't mean a doe's a doe. I have figured out recently that a doe is not a doe because an older doe, 4.5 plus, is much more likely to have twins and raise them to maturity. Mm-hmm. So anytime you take out an older doe, you're usually taking out
a high producer.
Deer. Yeah, a high producer. You're taking out 3 deer for the next season as opposed to 2. Mm-hmm. So
they wanted more does harvested this year than the last few years, which means that probably because of last spring being so good for us, that they had a really good year. So that population's trending upwards, I guess.
Which is, I mean, it sounds good, but you still want to keep that buck to doe ratio right, and the more deer you let survive, the more that are going to perish from natural causes,
death,
disease and stuff,
of
and
starvation.
I mean, we've seen, especially in Texas with the CWD scares, like a high deer density is a scary thing.
Yeah.
And
we've got that in most parts of the state,
for sure. And excuse me, down there, they're smart for one reason. At least on this, they don't run feeders much. Just during the season, some of their hunters do. The family doesn't, and that's partially for the reason why. Because whenever you start running feeders, you concentrate the deer in your area, as opposed to letting them mill around and spread out all across the ranch.
Okay, so here's a little devil's advocate here that I have heard a theory. So, and I guess like when they quarantine an area when they have found CWD positive deer in that area in some of these states, they say, no feed. And if it's a state that does allow feeding, a lot of times they'll just say like no feed within 5-10 miles of here or whatever. And they mark a radius and they won't let the landowners feed. And so some people say, well, if you would let the landowners feed, it would keep the CWD positive deer from spreading out. So kind of a cool train of thought, a little different theory there,
true. Well, they haven't.
But
of course, never had a positive.
They have exactly. It's a different situation.
Scare. But that is good to know if there ever is. And, like just lay the corn to them and keep them all in one spot.
Right, and just kill them off because that's what they're doing in those zones. A lot of times they're saying this is the area where we don't feed, and then we're going to try to kill everything off. Well, it's almost like, well, why wouldn't you want to stack everything in there and just mow them down and hope that clears it out,
And we were chuckling, but it's a pretty sad thing.
It really is.
Man, I feel for the people who have had to deal with that, and it's
like, what if you're within that radius, and I mean, that's a terrible thing for if you're a property owner, especially.
Yeah, it is. And it's sad that like some, I'm not going to try to step on any toes, but some industries in the state have kind of perpetuated the CWD thing. You know what I mean? And, Texas deer is big business.
Oh yeah, and from what I understand, we basically started like the breeder buck craze.
Which I'm not about. Like it's not my thing at all.
Me neither.
I despise it so much.
Yeah.
But it's free country, and right now it's legal. Do what you want to. I will not participate. But.
You're right. I have heard from a biologist, I'm pretty sure, that you can't tell if the deer is negative. You can only tell if it's positive for sure, that's scary in its own.
CWD is a scary, scary thing.
Yeah.
And
anyway,
just pray and hope that it doesn't happen around here.
I know because, frankly, like they don't know. They think that it's not really something that can be transmitted to humans, but they don't necessarily know either.
Oh, yeah.
And so like it's just scary to think about like having to deal with meat differently and not just being able to eat it and enjoy it, and to think about it every time, that's just not
pretty
cool.
much just, the safe bet is to always stay away from spinal columns of any mammal.
That's what the Hank Shaw book that I have. Yeah, it's pretty much what he says too. And I guess brain as well.
Yeah, probably so. Dude, I love oxtails. Have you ever eaten oxtails?
What is that?
It's a thing that it's like off of beef. It's like the ligaments in the tail.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're so good. I hope that doesn't count as spinal column. It probably does.
I bet it does.
Dang it. Okay.
Yeah, I've never had one.
Oxtails.
Do they sell them in like Walmart?
Probably. There's a soul food place down where I used to live. Super nice people run this thing, dude. Just the coolest. There's an old lady in there.
Oh, you told me about this.
Yeah, dude,
down by the coast.
Miss Stella, dude. Miss Stella's like 80 and she runs around and she's got, she's an African American lady, and she has really thick ebonics. Way of speaking, and I'm not even gonna try it, but it's just like she talks in like jazz comes out of her mouth. You know what I mean? Like
she might have a little bit of that Cajun.
She does. They're from Western Louisiana originally.
Yeah, they
like
probably got a little Cajun
like
French thing going on there.
Yeah, but dude, they can cook up some food, and Miss Stella runs around down there, just singing hymns all morning long. She gets here like 7 to make the cornbread. So good. I did some remodeling on their kitchen one time. That's how I figured out about the cornbread. Like, she gave me cornbread samples while I was there doing remodeling. Dude, it was the best job ever. Like,
It's hard to beat cornbread, man. Huh? You got me thinking about it. I might have to make some cornbread with my next stew.
Man, dude, what we need to do? I mean, we're getting way off on tangents.
Yeah,
right
we
now,
are. Yep.
But we need to, like, this might getting real hippie, but grow some corn and grind our own meal and make some. Like, how cool would that be?
It would be.
It'd be neat. I bet it's a lot of work, though.
I'd like to grow some corn and harvest a deer off of it around here.
That'd be all right.
I think you could do pretty good. 'Cause there's no corn ever around here even close. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Okay, so
what were we talking about?
Mason. We're starting first.
Talking about no feeders, right?
Yeah, no feeders. Okay, so it makes it a lot of fun because you're actually hunting deer the way deer are meant to move through that country.
So they're not running feeders during the season now?
No, not at all right now. Their hunters run feeders pretty much just during bow season and don't have like that much luck at them. Because, deer get conditioned to stuff. You can't just like one day, 1 month out of the year say you're going to run feeders and deer are like, oh, okay, there's a cornfield there. I'm going to go to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not how they work.
Especially... They can be like ultra conditioned off those things too. I've seen it
off of them.
Oh yeah, I mean like
I'm
that.
a big
saying
believer
like
that you're not going to kill a mature buck on a corn feeder.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen unless he just slips up one day.
It is. I think there's definitely some proof there that it's very very tough.
For sure. I mean, I'm sure there's guys that are like, oh, I do it every year, but like
yeah, they
in my experiences,
right. I think that you would stand a better chance trying to take on the challenge if you have the time to be a little better hunter or a little better map reader or whatever and try to understand like this is where a mature buck is going to be during the rut or whatever rather than trying to shoot him off a feeder. Because a lot of times, in my opinion and in my experience, the only time you're going to shoot a deer off a feeder or a corn pile, a big deer like that, or not the only time, but one of the few times you're going to shoot one is when he comes in 50 yards downwind and scent checks it and before he leaves. Because I've seen that happen. I had a big old 160 class 10-point come in one time and just all he did was come in and scent check. He was 50 yards away from me, and I'm not going to make that shot. And he just stands there for a second, heads right back out where he came from.
Man.
They don't get on camera when they do that too. If your camera's on the feeder,
no kidding.
So you don't even know that sucker's there.
Man, that's cool.
But anyway, sorry I'm cutting you off with the story, but
no, it's cool. You got me thinking all kinds of ways right now. But anyways, okay. So Mason, first morning. So deer move like deer are supposed to move through that country, right? They love the ridge lines and really stay out of the basins like almost altogether. They come down to feed at night down there. Like whenever you spotline at night, you'll see deer down and we call them the flats. That's what they call them. Like
so it's where those fingers kind of die out, and it's not really like a valley or a finger.
No, it's okay. So, those big hills. It's about I'd say they're probably 200-foot hills. Pretty good size. Maybe even bigger than that in a lot of places. But just for instance, a 200-foot elevation change and down towards the southern end, they spread out a little bit, and there's some flats. The valleys are actually flat, and it's not just a creek draw.
Right, where the hills are kind of farther apart, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of where those big live oak trees are, and there's some mesquites down there, and some places are just, wide open prairie, which, it's really cool. A lot of cool native grasses and stuff. And then the deer usually just run the ridgelines during the day and bed up, on some kind of little
like a point.
Yeah, there's what's called catclaw, which is a bush that like Satan kicked out of hell, man. Like it's just you know what catclaw is?
I do, man. Them big old finger things or whatever that kind of like stick out. And is that what you're talking about?
Well, they don't have big things. It's small.
Well,
it looks a lot like a mesquite bush, except it's got the sharpest little strong thorn you'll ever see.
They look like a baby mesquite tree.
Yeah,
I think I know what you're talking about.
And they will rip you to shreds.
Yeah,
and that's where the deer like to go. So anywhere there's catclaw, and that's usually like 2/3. It's really cool because it's usually 2/3 the way up one of those hills. There'll be a big catclaw, and that's where the deer usually sit with, and they can just overlook the whole valley, But one of the place I hunted on Friday morning was this little bowl on the end of a hill where like this hill had a valley kind of in the middle of it that wasn't near as deep, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a really cool spot. It was an old burn, and there's always a lot of green grass there. So saw a lot of deer. We're not really taking spikes unless they're like really big spikes. You know, we let those small ones. You know, 1.5 year old spike, he can still turn into a pretty good deer.
Right. Yep.
But I had what I thought was the doe and a yearling working around me for 30 minutes that morning, and was literally knocked onto my loop, about to draw, and then saw the little 1.5 inch spikes on his head. Mm-hmm. So that was pretty depressing that morning.
Yeah.
And I saw a bunch more deer, and they were winding me down in there, which was really silly because I had a southeast wind, the deer to the straight south of me, and we're still getting my wind. So in that bowl, it was swirling and stuff.
Yeah.
And 5 does came through later. Then a 3.5-year-old 8-point came through, trailing those does up. And this is, January 14th or whatever, you know what I mean? So, still some rutting action going on down there.
Hey, that was a cool graph you sent me yesterday.
The whole rut.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so TPWD has the rut statistics for the whole state of Texas in the different regions, like Piney Woods, Big Woods.
And it's so different across the state.
Yeah, it is.
What I loved about it is, our state is big, but like once you get from a certain like line and go north in the U.S., for the majority of the U.S., you're going to have like almost like a date that is like peak breeding. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And for Texas, there's like 7 different regions or whatever, and like 6 different breeding periods that are peak breeding.
Yeah, in the southeast Texas coast, you have a rut that's in late September.
Right.
And that's just a complete non sequitur.
Dude, we need to go hunt it, man.
You can't. There's no season for it.
There's no...
No, bow season opens like, the first week of October, and it's already over.
That's right.
It's already over, dude. You're hunting late season when you start down there. It's nuts. And, I used to live there. People complained about it all the time. It's like, well, TPWD knows what they're doing, and they're, apparently it hasn't affected the harvest statistics down there much.
Right.
People still take.
Well, I'm wondering if that rut would trail into the 1st of October, too,
It might. I mean, I'm sure it would. I mean, we've noticed it here in Texas. There's a trickle rut. There's always is. Like
just
it's
mild climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was checking those does, and I actually walked off and left him in the area. I mean, he wasn't doing me any good, and it was 8:30 and really muggy down there, which is weird for down there. But little did we know that the cold front was going to get there a day and a half early, and within an hour it was going to drop to 55 and be blowing out north about 20, which was great for hunting, But so I went down to meet my buddies. They'd been to a stand that's further down, and they came back and met me down in one of those flats, and we were headed back on the little UTV they had, and on the way back, that cold front hit, and wind picked up, and one of my friends says, that went out of the north? And I was like, yeah, it is. That's weird. And then, within 20 minutes of riding on that thing, it cooled off a ton. And we ended up jumping some deer right there, right off the little ranch 2-track, and we're there to harvest does. So it's not about, the hunt, per se. I mean, it is still fun to go hunting, but if we see a doe, we need to harvest it. So we jump out of the UTV. My buddy, he's got a 30-06, and she's at 70 yards. So he shoulders up. He sighted in for 200 yards. Shoots right over her back. I see the does fly. They run up the hill a little ways. Well, he heads back to the UTV. I'm like, the deer's still right up there. They don't know what just happened. I take off with my bow, end up stalking these deer for about 200 yards and weaving in and out of mesquite trees and prickly pear and stuff. And it's a doe and 2 yearlings. So she's an older doe. You can tell because she has 2 yearlings with her. They're good and strong. No worries about harvesting them. They're going to make it through the winter, or harvesting her. One of the yearlings spots me. She figures me out, but I suppose that mom doesn't trust with the stupid young deer. I've seen that before. Have you seen that before? Sometimes those yearlings just run around, throw their tails up for no reason.
Right.
It's that goofy.
Yep.
Mom didn't think that much of it. They were still kind of spooked, but didn't know what happened from the gunshot. Well, I see her at 55. She's looking away, and I make ground to 40. And I get there. I don't have a chance to range or anything, but Okay, so we are so dependent on rangefinders. Sometimes it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I make it a habit of sitting in a stand sometimes and just judging stuff. It's like, that's 42. That's 33. And checking myself. So I'm not saying I'm great at it at all, but
Teaching yourself.
yeah. Well, both the animals I've harvested this year, I haven't had time to range
Right,
anything.
right,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
I harvested that elk, no time to range. Harvested this doe, no time to range. Had her at 40, quartering away pretty hard. I put the pin right on her back rib and released, blew through her. And, dude,
All right.
from 40 yards away, I could tell. I was like, man, I just smoked her. And the cool thing is, like, it was still at that moment, and you can hear that good of the air going through. You know what I'm talking about. Most people do that. That's harvest something with a bow, and you're like, that was good.
Yeah.
And what else was cool is my other two buddies were behind me about 100 yards watching this whole thing transpire. And they, like I said, they were like watching me sneak and move around. And I kind of like knocked on my arrow real slow. And they said they saw me draw and just get solid as a rock. And they were like, oh, man, here it comes. And they heard me release and heard that arrow hit but couldn't see the deer. Well, as she runs off, and there's a great, great blood trail. The arrow blows through one cactus pad and goes into another, and there's just blood all over it.
Wow.
It was great. But she ended up running about 120 yards. Dude. It's crazy how tough they are
Dude,
sometimes,
they will,
man.
It blows my mind
I know.
sometimes.
And the whole time, it was red carpet. I mean, like, there was never once where we slowed down. It's like, I don't know where the blood is. You know, it's just led us all the way to her. But, so yeah, that was my doe harvest story.
Cool.
It was a lot of fun, man. Like, I mean, I'm never going to say I'm proud of myself, but I was super happy that I was actually able to stalk those deer after he missed her and pull off a shot. Like, my buddy missed with a gun and I shot her with a bow. Same deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And no rangefinder and put it all together, man.
Yeah.
That makes it cool.
It was super exciting.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have taken a picture of the arrow and how it was once it had gone through her, because like it was like stuck through two prickly pear pads and blood all over it. It would have been an awesome shot. But I was in the moment, dude. I was like, I was pretty pumped.
Rip it out and run across the pasture. Yeah.
But, so we got her all taken care of and everything, and
That's
I
cool.
hunted for another couple days, and didn't really ever get another good opportunity. I drew on another deer and didn't have a good clear shot at 45. It was a little far. The last night we were there, I had a doe at 40, and she would never slow down for me to take a shot, and she was already skittish, so I couldn't grunt stop her. Also, the last night I was there, I was the closest to the biggest buck I've ever seen. So, like, not the
Really?
biggest I've ever seen, or not the closest I've ever been to a buck, but the two coincided. He was about I would say like, I'm going to go ahead and say he's 147. Like, I mean, I can see
upper
my
140s.
say, you know, mid to high 140s, 9-point. Just a giant for down there, especially, you know, like probably 17 inches wide, super tall tines, and he was at 45 yards. And I didn't draw back on him, but I held my bow up and put my pin on him just to say I did it. Like, he would have been dead if I could have. It was unbelievable. Like, and, you know, I've seen good sized deer from the tree stand, but being on the ground with him was a complete different thing.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like, I was juiced, and I knew I couldn't even shoot him. You know what I mean? Like, I was shaking.
Yeah. The ground deal is different, man. It's a different game. It's fun. I've done some of that in Kansas over the last probably 3 years or so, probably. And it's crazy. I had a deer I've told you about that was, I could not make him score less than 167 at 35 yards, but he was on the other property, and I was on the ground with him, and just, it's different, man.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It is, man. You feel like an Indian or something.
Yeah,
you know what I
it's
mean?
like it's primal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty sweet. Like that. I mean, I always get juiced up when there's deer around. You know, you've seen me. I get kind of excited, but like when you're on the ground with them, it's like there's that extra edge that's just, and it feels good.
Yeah.
You know, and it reminds me of elk hunting some. You know, and it's a good thing, and it's good to practice because I mean, like, okay, if you want to go do a Western hunt, that is life. You know what I mean? Like when we're going to go out and try to harvest a mule deer this fall, we're going to be on the ground most likely when we try to do that, you know? And if you go elk hunting, that's how it's always going to be. You know, I mean, sheep, you're going to be, of course, be on the ground because there's no trees there. You know,
Yeah.
but like, so it's good practice and good things to do, and that's why I like the aspect of kind of rolling into the East Texas stuff like we've been here. The hogs, I mean, they're not the most wary of animals. They got great noses, but still, if you do something stupid, they're going to run. You know, they can see you on the ground moving around a ton. So it's a good way to sharpen your skills. You know, being on the ground with something and having to, you know, judge distances on a snap and being able to, you know, just think about
It's hunting, man.
Cutting stuff off and, you know, positioning yourself for the shot that's upcoming. Because in a tree stand, you know, like, you've already done all that, and you're just sitting there waiting on something to walk through your hole.
Right.
It's a lot different.
I can only imagine from just knowing how big some of these bucks look from, you know, 20 yards or whatever. I can only imagine being 30 from an elk. You know, I mean, golly, dude.
Dude, think about this. I missed that bull in 2013 at 11 yards, my recurve. I'm telling you, dude, he looked like Godzilla coming around the corner. Like, there was this live oak tree, or I guess it's some kind of little post oak or something, but a little oak tree clump right here. And he, like, walks in at 23 yards straight on. I have no shot, okay? And he comes around that corner, and he's at 11. And I could see not only the white of his eyes, but I can tell, like, there's some red stuff. Like, he's mad. And he's like, you know, like, making all kinds of crazy noises.
It's crazy, dude.
And I'm quivering in my shoes, and I miss. So, anyways, that's a little side story.
So, that doe that you shot, though, she was how old?
6.5.
And that's according to?
That's according to the tooth judgment. So, it's a real scientific process. They have a wildlife biologist, a regional wildlife biologist that comes out to the ranch every year, does a deer survey, and he does it for all of their. They're in one of those not wildlife management areas, but like the community is
QDMA kind of deal. Or?
It's the, how do you call that? It's like, you know how Birch Creek had a wildlife management thing for a while. You know, and that's like people in that general area all sign themselves up to be deer managers, you know, and it's kind of like a coalition kind of thing. Maybe QDMA.
Well, I know they have those, the QDMA, it's like a pack of landowners. I'm forgetting and blanking what the term is that they call it for the QDMA. I can't believe I've been literally talking about it for like 6 months, thinking about this property that I might get eventually, you know. I can't remember though what it's called right now, but yeah. So what you're saying basically is that there's a Texas biologist, Texas
TPWD guy,
Parks and Wildlife biologist,
comes out and does a deer survey and says, you know, how many bucks did you harvest last year, how many does, and adds it into what he sees in the pasture and lets you know how many you take off the place that year, and that's how we get our numbers, you know?
Right?
And
then so when y'all at the end of the doe hunt, he comes and ages them and stuff, or
no, they actually give the landowners the tools to do that.
Oh, cool.
They have a jawbreaker tool that they use. Like once you harvest the deer, you slip back their cheek a little bit, and then you get in with a metal device that breaks the jaw open to where you can see the top and the bottom jaws. And I've gotten pretty decent at it. After looking at their stuff, because if you look at the jaw comparisons for East Texas as opposed to down there, the teeth look completely different, and they even wear different, because down there they're picking up sand and gravel all the time,
right? And
they're eating a lot of grass. Up here, there's a lot of browse, and there's hardly any sand or gravel, you know. So our tooth wear is a lot different. But I'm like, for some reason when I go down there, I'm the old doe killer. Every year I kill the oldest doe. This year I killed at 6.5. She's the oldest. That's what she aged out at 6.5. Last year I killed a 7.5, and the year before that I killed an 8.5.
Golly.
Dude, 8.5's an old deer.
That's an old deer, man.
Yeah, she actually started. I don't know if she lost body size or if she just was, because deer are individuals. She was like dressed at like 58 pounds.
Whoa,
so pretty small.
Yeah,
and those deer down there are smaller in general, anyways.
Right.
So we aged all those deer. The average age of the does that we harvested this year was 5.5.
That's
good, Most of
man.
them were 5.5s. There was like 2 4.5s and my 6.5. And that deer that I harvested had 2 fetuses in her. So
really?
For sure, yeah, she for sure was bred and had was going to produce 2 fawns next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, man. I've never seen one with a fetus in it.
Yeah. That's, I mean.
I'd shot a lot of does, over the years. I've been.
I always check down there. I mean, it's, I don't know how you feel about that ethically. I mean, you've killed the doe, so the babies are going to die. And, I just always like to know, how many, because the 7.5 I killed last year had 3.
Ooh.
3 fetuses.
Triplets.
Yeah. How weird is that?
Yeah.
I don't even understand how that's biologically possible, but.
We had triplets on our place in Kansas last summer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's pretty cool. I really enjoy, and that's what I went to college to do originally, was to do, wildlife studies like this. I've since gone way off of that path, but, it's really what interests me a lot,
yeah.
And I like the whole idea of managing the deer herd to be as healthy as possible and produce, because we can't maintain just whatever the deer want to do down there as far as populations go. The land will, in a flash, support more deer than it will perennially, if that makes sense. So instead of having these peaks and valleys in deer populations throughout the years, if you keep them at that one, there's happy medium equilibrium, you have to keep them right above that so you have enough to harvest as humans, but
by the end of the year, it's back to the happy.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't have these little valleys like we had in East Texas,
right.
The past 20 years.
Which we should talk about that sometime.
I want to talk to biologists before we.
We should get Pop on there and talk about it.
yeah, for real.
That'd be pretty good.
You talk to the old timers like they didn't see deer,
Right. Yeah.
But pretty cool, man. So
that's neat.
Brought that deer home, shared the harvest.
Heck yeah, dude! I got 2 back straps out of it,
man. And then Pop, I brought him the rest of it because he didn't get to harvest deer this year, and he's an old timey hunter, hunts out of box blind, on a deer feeder, and didn't get to shoot a doe this year because our doe seasons are so short, and he has a hard time with the cold and with the hot, so it's got to be the perfect deer hunting day for him to get. He's getting on up there, but he still gets after it. But anyway, so he took that deer and made a whole bunch of jerky out of it. So.
It's good.
I'm sure I'll share the harvest with you some more once I go to Sulphur Springs and pick up some of that.
Yep.
Okay, so Pop makes weird jerky. It's not truly jerky. It's like steaks. He doesn't really hardcore dry it, but it's delicious.
Oh, I bet.
Makes it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't last a long time, but it's real good. So
I look forward to it.
And then, so tell me about those straps, man.
Well, I did one. It was last night. Yep, did. Which I shot a doe in October, and so I've still got some backstrap off of that. And then, but I wouldn't have enough for the end of the year till the end of the year, for sure. So I was really glad to see those come in. Plus, they're backstraps, dude. You know. Yeah. But I did one last night, and I'd cut them up into. I cut one up into what I thought might be like a 4 serving plus a little bit, in case we all get together and do something. And then I cut the other ones up into little 2 servings because Jet likes it. He just doesn't he's real finicky about a lot of things, and so he doesn't like chewing it up and getting it in his teeth. He's like, as soon as he gets one little piece in his teeth, he needs a toothpick, So it's almost just too much of a hassle for him to eat deer meat right now, Yeah. But anyway, so I cut it up into 2 little 2 servings, and so last night we did. Because I smoked up my house the last time I did this, I tried to get that skillet really hot on the grill, and it got pretty hot. It almost got to 400 in the grill, which I'm sure the skillet was maybe a little bit hotter being right there on the flame. And threw it on there, and that doe had a lot of fat on it because I guess old doe,
Yeah.
But even being, a little hill country where it's usually hot most of the year, it sucker had pretty good fat on it.
She was the fattest doe I've ever harvested.
Really?
Bar none. I mean, I actually harvested some of the lard off of her, and I'm going to try to render it and see if I can't cook with it because there was so much, and it was good, clean fat,
Right.
and it was just in ample quantities. We literally were seeing chunks of fat in the blood trail. I mean, I'm talking about
really
like ping pong ball sizes.
Wow.
And we thought they were like lung hunks or something because I've seen that happen before, you know. But no, it was pieces of fat.
Wow.
That's how fat she was.
It's crazy.
Yeah, but
Well,
anyways.
okay, so not to even continue too far off that, but when we hunted out in Memphis, Texas, and there's a lot of ag out there. There's a lot of cotton fields, and there was at the time, I don't know if there still is, but there's a lot of peanuts there. They grew a lot of peanuts.
Yeah.
And dude, like you'd clean a deer, and your hands would be greasy for like a day. You know, they had that peanut fat, and I was too young to really understand like if it tasted any better than the last deer I had or anything, you know. But I'm sure that it would.
I bet.
You know. But anyway, so I cooked the last night. I threw her on the skillet, threw the back strap on the skillet, fat down to try to get that stuff to render down, and then let it sit there for a couple minutes. Turned it around, and it was pretty hot. You know, it wasn't as hot as I would have liked it to be, but I got a little bit of a singe on one side of it, and it kind of cooked in the fat a little bit. And I mean, I basically had it on there for probably 7 or 8 minutes, and took it and threw it in the oven at 375, which is just a number I put on. It's not like scientific or anything. And finished it out there for about another 7 minutes or so, maybe, you know. And it was perfect. I mean, like I'm a medium rare guy. I don't really like it rare. And I definitely don't like it medium, you know. And I'd rather eat it probably a little more rare than I would more done. But it was like perfect for me, you know. And I sent you a picture, but
oh yeah, dude, it looked tasty.
Yeah, it was good, man. And I ate it for lunch. Finished a little.
I know. I got to see it firsthand today. It looked real good.
Yeah,
I had
awesome.
my elk taco soup going over there too, so we were both enjoying our harvest.
We were, man. We had it. I mean, I'll be doing that. I'm gonna try to, you know, eat as much of it as I can, and you know, if I need to do something else, you know, hopefully get some squirrels this winter and spring.
Hey,
you know,
I got 2 rabbits in the freezer right now. Rabbit dumplings are happening soon.
We need to do that, man. Yeah, for sure.
You've never had rabbit, right?
Nope.
I'm telling you, like, you know how, like, we've talked about before probably that there's some things that people eat just because it sounds cool. Like, people eat coon, and coon's pretty tasty, but, like, some people just think it's neat to go eat a coon.
Yeah,
Rabbits, you think, like, oh, yeah, I'm eating rabbit. But once you have it, you're like, no, I want some rabbits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Give me the rabbits.
Yeah, let's go get some bunnies.
Yep.
But, yeah,
well,
so we'll be doing that soon.
We need to do that for sure. So I guess we'll move on real quick to kind of what we did this past weekend. Besides, well, yeah, what we did this past weekend, or tried to do at least.
Yeah.
So
hey, we were successful in a sense of the word.
Yeah. So we went on some public land, check out some new stuff, and we thought, okay, let's take a canoe down this creek, and we're going to try to get 2 miles back. And it's like 2 miles if you draw like pretty much a straight line. Okay. So you talk about getting into these little river bends and stuff, and it ends up being a little more than 2 miles. So anyway, we decided that we would do that instead of walk the 2 miles in and walk the 2 miles out. And we since have rethought some stuff.
Maybe it's good to burn the boot leather instead.
Okay, so what we thought was let's do that, and we'll do it in a half a day, basically. Well, actually, less than a half a day, really. And days are pretty short still right now. So we get out there, and we weren't kind of in too much of a hurry at first, and we quickly realized that we probably should have been in more of a hurry, but. Anyway, we launched the canoe. We take off. We're doing fine. Kind of just enjoying our time there. It's a nice day. It's like cold enough to not get too hot and sweaty while you're doing this, you know, but not so cold that your fingers hurt or anything, you know. It's perfect, dude. And so we get down there, I don't know, what, a mile maybe when we found.
Okay, so we had to cross 2 beaver dams on the way down, which were no big trick, right?
Yeah.
To that spot. And we're like, oh, this is smooth sailing. The beaver dams kind of made the water a little bit deeper, too, so it was kind of nice,
right.
Easy to paddle in and stuff. And then we got to a location that I hunted before, got out to go kind of look at the area so Tyler could see it. And wouldn't you know, I left the bow in the canoe, pop up over the edge, and there the hogs are at 20 yards.
Yeah, they're busting through the brush right out in front of us.
I had to chase them just because it's what I do. Even though I didn't have a weapon, but it was fun.
Yeah.
And so,
but before that, we found a deadhead.
Yeah. That was before that?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Tell us the story.
Okay, so we're sitting there in the canoe, and there's, of course, KC sees this sucker. Like there's like dead limbs everywhere, that you could literally mistake for a shed antler at any moment, So it all looks like one big old shed antler everywhere, And so we're cruising down. We had just passed a beaver dam, and we're cruising pretty good. And I'm over here, doing my thing where I really am deeply thinking about all the things about deer hunting, or whatever.
Tyler's like, the banks are deeper here. And I'm like,
yeah,
there's a deer shed.
yeah. He goes, there's a horn right there. Yeah, there's a deadhead. And we're like, cool, man. So the water is like a foot deep. I mean, we were having trouble just even getting to the bank hardly without, having to step in the water.
The mud is Play-Doh.
Yeah. You stick your paddle into it 6 inches and you can't hardly get your paddle back. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we finally get the boat swung around and get the camera ready, and we're going to do a little, just film as we walk up there and stuff. And as we're paddling to it, and we get up there, and, we had seen it from the bank, and you could see, what looked like a G2 that was about 6 inches or maybe 7, and then a little bitty G3 out on the end is what it looked like. That was like 2 or 3 inches, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool, little 2-year-old buck, 8-point or whatever, And so we hop out on the bank, and we are starting to walk up to it. We had to kind of go around, kind of south of it. We couldn't just go right up to it because of the way the mud was and everything. So we're coming up right there, and
we're like,
I'm like, that thing's wider than I thought it was going to be for sure, because you can see the other main beam now hanging out on the other side. And so we walk up there, and we still don't really know what's going on. And this sucker is buried in the mud in the creek bed, basically. I mean, it's it's not in the water, but it's in the mud. Yeah. It's buried. So KC grabs it and he starts pulling it up, and it's not coming up. It takes forever, and he's shaking, and all of a sudden it pops out of there, and there's the G2s. They were under the mud.
Well, we thought were 2s were 3s.
Yeah, and there's some nice G2s, and one of them's got this little, almost like an acorn, claw, swing in kind of deal.
It's like
on
a
it.
90-degree turn and then goes back up. It's super cool.
And then it has the same characteristic on its G4 on that side too. Mm-hmm. And so, it had busted off brow tines or whatever, so there's no telling how actually big they were. But it's a solid deer, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
Public
we both
land.
decided we would both smoke it if it came in. And
oh, yeah.
There's no telling how long the thing had been there because, I mean, there was mud all, it was encased in mud, pretty much buried, up to the G3s, and the skull was rotted off pretty much. It's just a skull cap is all you get. And then, I mean, it's got green moss
algae,
on it and stuff. I mean, it's at least probably been dead 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's been there a while, man. I mean, long enough to get silted over a little bit, up on the higher river.
But that's super cool. Stuff. We're going to put up some media stuff for that.
I'll try to do my best to coincide that with the podcast release so that you can go check it out pretty quickly after the podcast.
Can we link that in the podcast description?
I imagine we could. Yeah,
we'll do that for them.
I don't know. Instagram's kind of weird sometimes with links, but I can try to do something there.
Anyways, go subscribe to our Instagram. You'll see it.
Yeah, and Facebook. We could definitely do a Facebook link, I imagine.
Yeah.
So anyway, we found that. We found the hogs, with no bow in our hand, just 40 yards down the bank, and then we end up, about the time that we were there at the hogs, where the hogs were, I look up and I'm like, man, it had been cloudy, you couldn't really tell where the sun was. I look up and I'm like, hey, the sun just popped out, and whoa, it's low. It's lower than it should be at this, I feel like at this time. So we've been kind of poking, I think, a little bit. So we start to kind of giddy up, and we're still trying to get back to our spot, and man, there's just lay downs all over the creek, and we're just having
log
jams everywhere. So we're having to portage and do this and that and fight that stuff, and it's real shallow because we hadn't had a ton of rain,
Tyler's worried about snakes. It's January.
Yeah, there was. Tomorrow there will be snakes
there
out.
Will be out snakes tomorrow. We'll go under a vine. Tyler's like, that's a snake vine.
I only do it just to appease you, man. I'm not really worried about it when it's 55 outside, but anyway, so we start getting it, and we finally get to our spot that we wanted to scout for a couple hours at dark. And we're like, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. And so we had already started kind of realizing like that the only way, I don't want to give away too much, but the only way that we were going to get out of this situation without probably getting in at about 1 a.m. was to call the backups, call the wives, and see if somebody could come pick us up. Because at that point, we were like closer to another road than we were, like much closer than we were, to our truck. It's always
easier to go downstream no matter what anyways.
Right, and we were going downstream. Yeah. So we'd be going upstream and trying to portage the beaver dams and fight the current and stuff, which I'm not like a super paddler by any means. So anyway, we did figure that out. So once we figured out that we would have some backup and we could do that, we basically scouted till we couldn't see anymore.
Yeah.
Which was only about 20 minutes.
No, we literally sprinted through the woods and speed scouted that thing.
Yeah, we got on a trail and we sprinted for 250 yards probably.
Yeah, like we got to go check that pinch point now.
Yeah.
Just got on our horses and went, man.
And I'm like, we are tired. I mean, I know I was for sure. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm dragging, got these big heavy boots on that are wet. And I'm just like, golly. But we found some stuff. And once again, I don't know if we talked about this in the last episode or whatever.
We hinted at it. I don't think we ever came out and said
it. I don't know if this is like, I don't know for sure. I'll have to read up on some stuff and educate myself. But we have run into, we're thinking like we're 2 miles deep. We're going to be away from people. Mm-hmm. Well, dadgummit, if there isn't, like everybody owns their own 40 acres and they're just going to hop over the fence when they see that deer living there.
And legalities or not, it's still frustrating either way to know that you put in the work and the effort.
And they drove their four-wheeler up to the fence and went in 60 yards.
Exactly. They hop a fence and go 60 yards. Yeah. And the private access guys are getting to hunt places where we worked our tails off to get to. And I don't know about the legalities
that may be part of it.
But some people that we've encountered are definitely doing some
illegal activities. But, yeah, there's definitely those types might or might not be following the rules because they're so far back in there.
It's one of those things where I'm like, man, if I own that land, I don't guess I can blame the guy.
Right,
I'd want to hunt that too. And like I own the land, backs up to it. Can I cross it? In Colorado, you can cross a national forest land. Uh-huh. So I don't know. But it's still just, on a personal level, it's frustrating to do as much work as we did and walk up. And Tyler spotted something before I did.
I did.
He did.
Are you talking about the blind?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2 blinds.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give me 2 times there. Mm-hmm. So what was the other thing I spotted? So I got 3 things on you. What was the other thing I spotted? Last time.
There was a stand in the tree.
Yeah, I spotted a stand. Mm-hmm. So I got 3 things, and you've got about 400. But anyway, I spotted. I'm coming up, and I'm like, well, there are some cedar branches that have been cut. I can see the round, And
I got my eyes on a rub the whole time. See, I can key in on the deer stuff, but Tyler, dude, we're working together and it works well.
Maybe.
You're noticing the stuff that I don't notice and vice versa.
Yeah.
But to our
force
demise,
to be reckoned with.
But yeah, so we saw that ground blind that God made.
He just put a bunch of cedar trees together, and it hadn't been seasoned in a while. But I almost feel like he's just hog hunting out there, which is that's fine. Whatever. It's not if it's legal, then that's good. That's good. But we actually ended up finding his footprints, which had to have been fresh because it rained last week.
Yeah.
And we find his footprints where he had been coming across. So we know, he's coming from private, and whether that's legal or not, I'm not sure. But anyway, he had been there pretty recently. And then it wasn't far from there when we ended up coming back around when I found that little ground blind that had been like flattened down, a little pop-up had been flattened down and was like just, dilapidated and falling apart.
I bet the thing had water over it, but been flooded over and stuff. It had been there a couple years.
Been there a while. So, no, it wouldn't, there's going to be stuff like that on public land. And
it's part of the challenge, part of the fun. You know, it's frustrating to no end to deal with that. But at the same time, if we go in there and smoke a giant, we figured it out. You know what I mean? And
exactly.
It's cool.
And I think, okay, so you deal with 1 or 2 private guys that are coming in back there versus being somewhere within a half mile where you're dealing with guys all season long and multiples, and so.
Yeah. And you know what else? We talked with with some guys recently about this stuff about deer pressure, or not deer pressure, but hunter pressure. It might play to your advantage in a weird way to actually have some hunter pressure there. That way, not to go to that spot because assuming that the deer can win them or feel that pressure, as opposed to just a big, not wasteland, but just big open area that
Timber.
you're the only hunter.
Yeah.
That hunter pressure
Where do
might
you
create
go?
a funnel.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it could be something, maybe not an advantage, but at least an aspect to apply to our hunting.
Yeah. We've got a lot to learn, a lot of things to kind of figure out, and you have a big heads up on me, or step up or whatever you want to call it, but you've been spent a lot more time on a lot of public lands and stuff, and like we talked about last week, I've been a private guy a lot, so that definitely helps that you have that experience. And I guess in the end, we scouted till dark, and kind of had a little bit of trouble, not too much, but a little bit of trouble actually finding our canoe because it was so dark.
Yeah.
We had to kind of reference the creek 3 times before we could actually figure out hey, there's our canoe over there. And so we got back in our canoe in the dark, and I had a headlamp, and you had one, but you didn't have it on because it was kind of hard to get to. So we had one little headlamp and about 3/4 of a mile of creek to navigate, and once again, brush piles and log jams and stuff. But
we probably crossed, I would say,
bunch, man.
20 total from entry to exit. Don't you think?
I would almost say a few more than that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
25, maybe. I don't know. It was definitely, I think, in the 20 area.
A lot. And one of them we had to drag 50 yards. That was the worst.
Yeah. And so we ended up basically trying to navigate and also navigate for your wife.
Yes, my wife, who just went to the doctor this morning and has severe bronchitis and still had it when she came to get us.
Yeah.
So she is a blessing from God, and thank you so much for putting in her.
And she was an hour away when we called her. So
she was as happy as she could have been in that situation to come get us.
Yeah,
she was still a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of become comical to her at this point that we're going to stay out later than we say we're going to. So she was like, I knew this was going to happen. Yeah, I'll come get you.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that was cool. So we ended up in the rain, muddy and wet. We had to drag the boat quite a ways to get it up to, past the bridge or whatever, and get it to where we needed to be to load it up. So she ends up picking us up in the rain. She does the old switcheroo from the driver's seat to the back seat. 2 long-legged guys hop up in the front, and you're driving, and we go all the way
in
down
a little bitty car.
several miles to my truck, and then we pull my truck all the way back down, to the takeout and load it up.
And it starts raining pretty hard.
It's raining good, we're sitting there in the rain waiting to be picked up at one point, and I'm like, it's starting to get kind of heavy.
Kind of cold too. We were working hard, and me and you talked back to our days whenever we were playing sports. You could do stuff in the cold because you're exerting so much energy. You're still warm. That's what we were doing last night.
Yeah.
And then you get up there on the bridge, and it's starting to get cold. And then you get home, and what happens?
Tired.
You crash out. I mean,
Total.
literally.
We didn't eat anything.
No. Yeah,
for
I didn't
hours.
even drink any water because we were.
Me neither.
That's weird for me. I'm a water hound.
Yeah.
I drink so much water. I had an apple rolling around the bottom of the canoe the whole time. It got kind of gross, so I think we just donated it to the coons.
I threw it out when you were up there cleaning some stuff. I was like, he's not going to want that.
No, that's fine.
I mean, a little bit of dirt wouldn't have been bad, but it was in the muddy water all afternoon. So anyway, but yeah, it was quite an experience because I've never just paddled through a creek in the middle of the night, kind of almost half lost. I mean, we knew where we were going. But
I told Tyler, almost when we were done, I told him, this isn't the first time I've had this happen to me. I did it a couple times in the canoe. One time, me and my dad, so I was raised kind of in the canoe. That's what me and my dad did, went canoeing and hunting. And one time we decided we were going to put in and make it all the way up river to a takeout spot that was 12 miles away. And we started, at 5 a.m. Well, we made it to where there was no going further and just had to ditch the canoe and leave it in the middle of the woods and walk out. So it didn't get as bad as it could have gotten last night. So that was good. There was a moment in time when I was like, I'm just ready to leave this thing, but I didn't tell you. So I'm sure you were there way before I was.
Yeah, the walking was actually quite a bit easier at some points.
You walked on the bank a lot more than you were in the canoe. Not a lot more, but quite a bit.
I was kind of doing some speed scouting
because it kind of let the nose of the canoe get up and I could get over stuff.
Yeah, it was very, like I said, I'm not a oarsman by any means, and so it was like I got home, I told KC, like KC told me when we were kind of sitting there after we had gotten done, he's like, man, I'm starting to feel kind of tired, or whatever, starting to sink in a little bit, and I was like, yeah, well, I guess whatever, and I just kind of feeling the same way I'd been feeling all afternoon, and then I got home, took a shower, grabbed a cereal because nobody in my house wanted to make me dinner at that point. and I sat down on the couch, and I'm talking within minutes, I was so exhausted that I don't know if there's been many times in my life that I have been that exhausted. And so I couldn't keep my eyes open, fell asleep on the couch, got up, went in my bed, and I was moaning getting there. I was, oh. And so I get in my bed, and I slept and woke up the next morning and was sore for a couple hours, and then I was okay. I was dehydrated all day, but anyway, it was kind of rough, for somebody who's not in the paddling shape.
Yeah.
So
but what do you think? Was it fun? Did you enjoy
I had a blast, dude. I mean, the only thing is, I kind of wondered if we burned too many brownie points versus what we actually got done. And that was my main issue.
Yeah,
but
I don't know how many of those late night come and get you Cassie has in her, so we might have burned that one for the 2017.
Well, I mean, not even just that, but my wife too. She was not. She was.
Yeah, your wife was really like in the middle of something when we called her.
Yeah,
it was like,
we called her first, and she was doing towel work, and I was like, "Oh, okay, you're doing towel work, and I'm playing."
And you want me to come do this?
Yeah. So anyway, there's a couple of cool, little things that we've been up to lately. We've got several guests lined up. We've actually already done a guest interview, and so we're gonna hopefully get some of this stuff released from the guests pretty soon, and try to get you guys maybe some more in-depth, a little less talking about story time and a little more tactical, or just at least some different perspectives from some guys that are living different parts of the country. So we got some really interesting stuff coming up, I think. Also, if you are listening to this and you're still tuned in, please give us a good review on iTunes. And, you can be positive and still give constructive criticism. So if there's anything that you'd like to hear or see from us on any of the social media, or anything you'd like us to dive into differently or whatever, we are definitely willing to listen to that, take it into account, and see if we can kind of cater to what you guys are wanting to hear.
Yeah, and reach out to us too. Like if you, really have some questions that you want to ask to an expert, we're not experts.
Yeah, but we can solicit them.
We have some contacts, and we can, find people who will have the answers, who we would love to talk to. So, if y'all feel like sending us in a certain direction, shoot us a direct message or something.
Yeah, Instagram direct messages or Facebook messages.
Or if you feel like there's something we actually might know, which is rare, but that we could help you with, if you want to be pointed in the right direction on some public land or something like that, it's something I can know a little bit about. So, you just shoot us a message, ask us a question. We love to talk deer and other stuff too. Ducks. And Tyler loves to talk ducks and tons of stuff. We all like to talk about cooking.
Got lots of hobbies, man.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, that's definitely, give us a review on iTunes, check us out on the social medias, do whatever, if you feel inclined to send us something. And then also, we're going to finish up just a last little section of close out a video tomorrow. We're going to finish the filming there, hopefully tomorrow, and try to get that up ASAP because it's pretty much edited. And so it's a food video and pretty cool little brief, basically we're going to be on the Food Network soon, I think, is what's going to happen. But it's KC did some of his elk meat, and it's going to be interesting for you guys to watch. So I'll put that on the YouTube channel soon, and you can subscribe to that to keep up and be notified when we have stuff like that come up. So anyway, I think we're going to get out of here. God bless you guys, man. Thanks for listening, and I hope you guys have a great week and weekend, and I hope you get out there into your element and do what you love. So from me and KC, man, we'll see you later.